Hey everyone, welcome back to another midweek chat with Jasmin. I'm your host, Jasmin Bryant, your brand visibility coach, helping coaches, speakers, and small business owners become more visible and make more money by showing up on camera and showing the world who you are because you are amazing. And everyone needs to know that. And speaking of amazing, I'm really excited to have today's guest, Lamar Willis. He is a serial entrepreneur, an ex-Politico, an all-around amazing person, and legit one of the smartest people I know. And I don't say that lightly. So welcome, Lamar.
Thank you. Good to be here with you, Jasmin.
I'm happy to have you because, like I said, you're one of the smartest people I know, and your business mind is absolutely unparalleled. I mean, it's a little annoying how easy these ideas come to you when you just start spitting them out. But before we get to that, because today we're talking about ideas to empires, just tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Um, you know, I'm not an entrepreneur by birth, right? I mean, I didn't grow up in a family where entrepreneurs were just a natural thing. My family was a lot of government workers, teachers, educators, hard workers, but not necessarily entrepreneurs. And so for me, I knew early on that I wanted to work for myself. I didn't actually know they were called entrepreneurs, but I had ideas, and I had ideas since I was a little boy. And as I grew up as a young man, I played around with those ideas, oftentimes putting them into the universe, but not actually manifesting or putting real energy behind them. And so those things never really came to pass, but they were ideas that I believed in. I look back and say, boy, it would have been cool had I done, right?
Mhm.
And so what I ultimately learned as I got older is to figure out how to live without regrets. And that was to put energy behind those ideas to make things come to fruition. And so I've been trying to live in that space for the last couple of decades. And so for that period of time, I've worked for nobody but me. So that's been fun. It's been challenging, but it has always paid more in dividends than I could have ever expected, honestly.
Yeah. And that's amazing because, like that's the dream, right? Like so many people have all these great ideas and they want to put them out there in the world. They want to be, very successful in whatever it is they want to do. And most of us don't like punching a clock, punching someone else's clock. And you are you're your boss, And so that has to just feel amazing and wonderful and like all
And
the things.
scary.
Yeah.
And scary, right? I mean, one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite rap groups of all time is if I don't move my feet, I don't eat, right?
Mhm.
I mean, so you have to actually produce.
Yeah.
Um, and if you don't eat. There are pros and cons to that, right? There's there's the floor, which is earning nothing,
Mhm.
but then there is no cap. No one can stop me from or put a limit on how much I can earn. Have to be careful when I say no cap because that's a whole new saying now. That means no lie, but it is no cap as well. I mean, it really is about you can make as much as you want if you can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Um, no one puts a cap on your earnings when you're an entrepreneur. It's
Yeah.
you. It's all on you. But the other part that makes it scary is if you have employees, you have to pay them first.
Mhm.
So you make nothing until you've paid all the bills, including, whether it's rent, whether it's cost for goods, whether it's, those variable expenses like utilities and all those other things, right? Um, and then what's left over is yours. So you have to be really good about creating what's left over. And that's the hard part. That's
Yeah.
the scary part because that number is never the same either.
Mhm.
Uh, and when you're a small business owner, that number is up sometimes it's down. Um, you know, my business partner and I opened a couple of restaurants over the last few years, and or a couple of years. We've opened 2 restaurants in about 12, 13 months.
It was
And
fast.
it was very fast. And so usually you're putting as much money in before you take anything out, right?
Mhm.
So you have to have another revenue stream to make sure that you can still pay your bills and live.
Yeah.
And I have the fortunate privilege of being a dad with 2 kids who frequently call me and say they need as well. So they're like
Right.
another, they're, as much as I love them, they're bills as well, right?
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you're figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah. And like you and I have talked about the differences between like being a full-time entrepreneur and being a full-time, worker bee with an entrepreneur side gig that you're trying to make a full-time gig. And, for so many people who are watching this live or watching the replay, they're in that space where they have a full-time job. They have something that they're passionate about, that they're trying to build into their empire. Um, but they're afraid of a lot of different things, right? Like I talk a lot about fear, but they're afraid of pulling that trigger and stepping all the way off of that safety platform of the full-time job. And so it's been a minute since you've had the full-time job and the side gigs. How how do you just decide, okay, I'm done with you, boss man. I'm going to be in charge of me. Like, how do you decide that?
Sometimes it's decided for you, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so the greatest adage out there is necessity is the mother of all invention, right?
Hmm.
And so when you have need, you figure it out.
Yeah.
If you I mean, it really does help you decide if you're really going to be good at this entrepreneurship thing,
Hmm.
because once placed in the space of sink or swim, do or die, all of the catchphrases, once you're in that space, if you deliver, it's probably in your blood to be able to go out and do it. Now there are a bunch of skills you need to pick up along the way. Your cost accounting, marketing, uh,
Mhm.
cost accounting, like how do I manage my books? Being a good administrator to some degree. Can I pay my taxes on time? Can I? Because if the tax man cometh, it is not pretty. It's not a pretty day.
Yeah.
Can I keep my licenses current? Can I keep, whether it's an alcohol license, if you're with the IRS, if you do taxes, right? Can I keep my EIN, whatever the tax thing they give tax accountants when you're filing taxes for people.
Okay.
I mean, EFIN is what it's called.
Okay. I
And
mean, I
so
had no idea. So, like,
so it's all
oh,
of these things, can I keep these things current so that I can be in business? I was talking to another entrepreneur who ventured out into some other things. He was running a security firm, and he said he had made his first $1 million profit ever
okay.
in life. And he started venturing into other things,
Hmm.
went back to a full-time job that paid him really well because the business was taking care of itself. He was really just trying to create all of these different revenue streams, invested in a couple of restaurants. But in the midst of doing all of that, he let the license lapse for the security firm.
Oh no.
So how do you do that? I mean, and I don't say that in a way to say that. I mean, but those are the things you have to take care of. You have to keep
Hmm.
that revenue stream going as you venture out into trying to be more than just, in Jeff Bezos's case, uh, a bookstore online, right?
Right.
He was a bookstore online, but he had a bigger plan, and you just figure out what. So you sometimes have to dream big, but then know how to take the baby steps to get to the big plan.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. A lot of us, we just fail to plan. Uh,
Hmm.
and it doesn't mean that we don't, like I said, necessity can create sort of that just jump in and do it.
Yeah.
But at some point you then have to take 10 steps back and say, okay, now I didn't plan this. It's going okay. Now I
Yeah.
need to get back into it and do some things a little differently. I need to set up my QuickBooks. I need to make sure that I have a marketing budget as opposed to just doing it haphazardly,
Yeah.
saying I need to jump into marketing. Oh, I need to be at this conference. No, maybe you should plan to be at that conference next year, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just being there this year. And sometimes you go this year so that you understand the value of being there next year. But you have to plan all those things and understand what the costs look like and how to impact your bottom line and really plan for it. But really the biggest thing, the best phrase I remember somebody ever said to me was, what is it you would do if you weren't afraid to fail?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that resonated with me. Of course, I heard it after I'd already jumped into it, but it's what my best friend accuses me of, which is not being afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been true since I got into politics, honestly, it's been true since I ran for SGA president, in middle school, right?
Yeah.
And I use that example because I had arrived at this middle school, brand new, 8th grade. I hadn't gone to school with these kids in 6th and 7th grade. And here I am, 8th grade, 4 or 5 weeks into a new year. And I think I should be able to run for president of the Student Government Association. And
I can totally see that.
Well, and I won. I won. That's the crazy part, right?
Yeah, of course you did.
And I remember people saying, how'd this guy win? He wasn't supposed to win. He wasn't supposed to. And I wasn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I wasn't afraid to do it.
Yeah.
And the people who probably could have beat me were.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just showing up and being willing to do it. A lot of us sit back and say, I could have done what they did. And they're right. You could have, but you didn't.
But you didn't. Yeah, exactly.
And so.
I tell people all the time, like, you need to show up before your competition does.
That's right.
It just, people are afraid to fail. They're afraid to put themselves out there, whether it's branding themselves, being on camera, running for SGA president as the new kid in school. But you just have to put yourself out there and you do it before someone else does, because you never know what could happen. You could become the SGA president as the new kid. You could make $1 million profit by, elevating your business. You just never know.
That's right. And so a lot of it is instinct, right? You have to be willing to trust your own instinct.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we'll sit back and we'll keep saying, well, it's just not ready yet. I have this idea, but it's just not ready yet. A lot of people suffer from analysis paralysis, right? They sit there and they analyze it and talk about it. And they're telling their friends about it. And then one day their friend says, that's a great idea. Lamar's not doing it, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah. And then they get mad because their friend did it. Or somebody who is a friend of a friend does it because the friend mentioned it to the friend of a friend, right? And you're sitting there saying, I should have done that. And so you have to not have that fear. It's, and you have to be willing to just trust your instinct, because instinct is real. You have to have it. The other philosophy I live by, I had a football coach in high school. They had what we call the 100% wrong club, right? Okay. And the idea of the 100% wrong club was, even if you did it wrong, if you did it at 100% full speed, something good could come of it. Okay. And so the notion is that you have to be willing to go full speed. You can't have, dip your toe in and say, well, I gave it a shot, it didn't work. Yeah. Well, because you stuck 1 out of 10 in.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And if you stand 10 toes down in it and you go hard, you're committed. Now the risk of that is when you fail, it hurts a little. And nobody likes to fail. Yeah. I hate failing. I hate losing.
Oh, I know.
And I've lost. The funny thing about that SGA race is that the very next year we go to high school, and me and the same guy run as a cohort for president and vice president, and we lost.
Oh.
Now, here's what happens. The people who saw you win, who should have won the first time, understood that it could work. And so they came for you. And so what you have to do in that space, and there's never any guarantee, but what you have to do in that space is make sure that you create the opportunity for people to see the other side of why they should keep riding with you. And I'm not saying we did or didn't do that. I think we had a good run, but the reality is that people will see and people will come. And so you have to always keep trying to make what you're doing better than what it was the day before. But I've seen both sides of it. I've won and I've lost. And and as painful as it is, it's what allowed me to appreciate my other phrase that I love, which is a quote by and he was a racist, but he had some great quotes. The great Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest football coaches in modern history. He said, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. And there are people who don't like that quote.
Yeah.
And I would say it. I would go to these career days at schools, and I would say it to these kids, and you could see the parents and the teachers cringe when I said it. And the problem is that we teach people to be okay with losing.
Yeah.
You should never be okay with losing. You must accept losing. You accept a loss gracefully, but you don't have to ever be happy about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people confuse with being a good loser. See, good losers aren't supposed to be happy about I'm so happy you won. No.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Congratulations. But just like the people came for me the next year, that's what you do. You come for them. That is what you do. You have to keep figuring out how to fight. You don't ever concede the war. You may concede the battle, but you don't concede the war. You keep fighting.
Yeah, you do. You do. That does bring me to another question though, because you were talking. You had so many good nuggets there, but one of the things that that came up was pivoting, really, right? Like, you have an idea, you run with it, you put all 10 toes in there, you go hard. But when do you know that it's time to say, okay, this isn't working, let me go back and try again, or I need to give it more time? Because kind of like a party, you don't want to leave the party too early, but you don't want to leave it too late either. So how do you find that sweet spot to get you where you need to go after you put in all 10 toes, you're running as fast as you can, and there's a wall coming up?
I think that's a great question. My latest project, right, which is, I call it my latest project, but it's been my Odyssey, right? When Homer wrote Odyssey, I think he was thinking about me and Sky Gamers, because it has been, nearly a 10-year journey, right? It was an idea. It's been close to 10 years. It first came to fruition in my head in about 2015.
Okay.
And then the process by which to do government contracting is a very arduous process anyway. And so once you figure that out, you get the RFP, you respond, you win. Then, of course, you have the setbacks in life, in this case, COVID, which caused us to take a 2-year hiatus on developing anything in airports.
Yeah.
And
before you move on to that, tell people what Sky Gamers is, because this is your, as you said, your latest, in air quotes, project. So what is Sky Gamers?
Well, Sky Gamers is our game lounge concept that we developed, and we are building in airports across the country, right? And so it's a lounge with food, beverages, retro games, gaming consoles where you can play, relax, and have some form of entertainment in an airport while you are traveling. But with food and beverage, which is the most important part, because that's what tends to draw people in while they're traveling, right? Which is that. And so the reason I point that out, though, is because there were setbacks, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we won our first two opportunities to build in Atlanta.
Mhm.
Um, and there have been roadblocks, hiccups, headaches, and all of those things here in Atlanta. But, when it's for you and you stay committed, 10 toes down, then we
Mhm.
win and we get an opportunity in Houston. That slows down, doesn't come to fruition. We win in Seattle. Seattle opened a month ago, right?
Mhm.
So several $1 million later, partnering with a international multi-billion-dollar partner, you make it happen. And so you figure out ways to kind of make these projects come to life. And so
Yeah.
that's what I mean when I say you have to stay the course, you have to keep fighting. To your
Mhm.
point, there have been things that I've said, nope, this is not a good investment of time and resources. Let's
Mhm.
stop. And sometimes that's been in 6 months, it's been 12 months. That's where instinct comes in. uh,
Okay.
but but we knew we had a good idea. I knew this idea was good. I knew it could make it. um, and someone actually stole it and bastardized it to some degree. And but the reality.
I saw it online, and I was pissed on your behalf. I'm just gonna just I saw it. And I was
That's
like, wait,
right.
what?
And so that's what happens when you pitch your idea to someone
Mhm.
and they sort of steal it and take it. But that's
Yeah.
why that's why if you don't have an NDA, which in this space you really can't,
Yeah.
you don't give them the game plan. You give
Yeah.
them enough nuggets to make them interested. Clearly they
Mhm.
were. But then they
Yeah.
went and took the most, I shouldn't say the most, the most visible part of it, but also the least lucrative part of it,
Mhm.
and they built it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, perfect. Well, you built the least lucrative part of it. But I think the lesson from that is this, which is, would you rather be first or would you rather be best?
I'd rather be best.
And Apple would agree with you, right? So the
Yeah.
iPod was clearly better than the MP3.
Mhm.
And so the iPod survived much longer. They sold many more. And
Mhm.
now we see that it has now morphed into a phone and all of these other things. Now you don't need any of that. You have streaming and all this other great stuff. But
Yeah.
at the time, the MP3 player was supposed to be the latest and greatest. And it was
Mhm.
okay, but everybody created MP3 players. But
Yeah.
nobody really figured out that platform until Apple created the iPod. And so
Yeah.
while they weren't first, they were best.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Sky Gamers will be in this space. Is we weren't first. We were first in the sense that we first put the idea out there, but we weren't first in terms of construction and building and opening. And
Yeah.
now I believe we will be the best and ultimately be the one that you see more prominently around the country. And if not, it'll be the form with which we put out there, which is the food and beverage concept with the gaming, because it doesn't work without it. You got to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just one dimensional.
One dimensional, and your store is usually empty. Check them all out when you fly around the country. The other
Yeah.
ones, not ours.
No. See, and now I kind of want to go to Seattle just so I can see.
Oh, absolutely, you should.
Yeah, we'll have to see, you know, what I do, because you know me, I'm always on the move.
That's right.
So I hope you can't hear the lawn guys are here now.
It's not too bad. You can't. I
Okay,
mean, you can hear a hum, but
it's
it's
so
not
loud.
bad.
They're in the front and they're in the back, and I'm like right in the middle.
No, nobody can really hear it. Trust me.
Okay, good. I'm like, oh my god, I can't even think. Okay, so we don't have that much time left. We're actually like out of time. But I want to know what is what is your best piece of advice for a new entrepreneur or even someone who's been in the game for a minute but hasn't had the level of successes that you've had? What is it you would tell them to do? Like, what did you want to know or wish you knew when you first started?
So I don't know that there's anything that I would ever go back and do over, because
Mhm.
that implies that what was meant for me wasn't
Regret,
for me. Yeah,
right?
and it means regrets. Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say: persistence. right?
Okay.
You have it. And no matter what we do right or wrong in this process of chasing our dreams,
Mm-hmm.
persistence always wins out. I mean, when you look at music artists, when you look at people like Steve Jobs, when you look at anybody, literally persistence is what wins.
Yeah.
I mean, you can prepare, and that is valuable, right? Save
Mm-hmm.
money. But you can save all the money in the world, and it may buy you the time you need to go full time into a project or a business venture. But really, persistence is what wins out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you have to plan your work and work your plan,
Yeah.
uh, and do that persistently. And if you do it long enough, things will come to fruition because people tend to value those who are in a space for a period of time. They tend to trust people who are in a space for a period of time. And so if people
Yeah.
aren't buying into your concept, your brand, your business, 3 months after you've opened your doors, that is because you only opened your doors 3 months ago. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily have a reason to trust you. But the
Yeah.
longer you're there, like you said in the very beginning, you have to be present to win. You got to show up.
Yeah.
You got to show up consistently. And it's that consistency and that persistence that I think wins the day. That's why the best and brightest aren't always the CEOs. They're the ones who work for the CEOs, because sometimes the best and brightest are afraid and they're not willing to be consistent in that space long enough to win.
Consistency is key, and I say it consistently. Um, you need to show up. You need to keep doing what you're doing because, like you said, you opened your doors 3 months ago. You're the new kid on the block. No one knows you. No one trusts you. You don't have a relationship. And so you need to have a relationship with your audience, with your customers. And it doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. I mean, it looks like it happens overnight, but I know it doesn't.
That's right. That's right. And, and
Yeah.
and I mean, and you have to be, that persistence means persistently moving forward even when people tell you no,
Yeah.
right? Because there are going to be a lot of no's. And you
Mm-hmm.
really only need that one right yes to make you feel like you're a winner.
Yeah.
But it may be 100 no's before you ever get to that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people, if I had told people that it had taken us almost 10 years to get to the opening of Sky Gamers in Seattle, people would sit back and say, well, gosh, what made you, stick it out, right? And it's because you have to know and see the forward progress, right?
Yeah.
And if you know you have something of value and you see forward progress, and it doesn't have to be, everybody looks for the exponential progress. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, you simply need to know that you're moving forward, and it may be incremental. And incremental may be, a few inches today, and then you get 20 feet, 100 yards tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you got to keep just moving forward, and that is just being persistent. That's why the word is persistence.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you. And that actually segues really well into the gift that I have for the audience,
Okay.
which is 5 ways to turn your content into cash. And one of the ways is being consistent. And so if you go to videos2cash.com, I put the link in the comments, then you can get that guide and really see some ways that you can show up better, show up more often to your ideal customers, to your ideal audience, and then make the money that you want and change your business. And I also put your Instagram link in the comments as well.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Awesome.
Sky Gamers. So you guys, if you're in Seattle, go check it out because I mean, you've got video games, you've got food, you got drinks. I mean, sometimes you have I had a 3.5 hour layover on Sunday. See if we had Sky Gamers at Hartsfield, I could have gone there instead of the Centurion Lounge. But
Exactly.
you know,
We're working with them. We're trying to get them there.
yeah. So yeah, you guys have options. All right. Well, Lamar, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for all of your insights and your nuggets of wisdom. I have 8 million more things I want to ask you, but we are so out of time.
Well, maybe you'll invite me back.
Absolutely. You have a standing invitation.
All right, I'll take it.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being with us. If you have questions, put them in the comments and we'll answer your questions for you. Again, check out Sky Gamers if you are at CTAC. Go to videostocash.com to learn how to turn your videos into cash, because why put it all out there if you're not going to get paid from it?
Exactly.
What else? Right? We want to get that money. I will see you guys on Friday for my weekly live on the TBD topic, which I think might be showing up in 2025. But content planning, I don't know. Still noodling it in my head. I've got a day. All right, guys. Have a good one, and bye for now.
All right.